Hello everyone, this is Tomato Chip Gaming, and today I want to talk about why haste is a lot better than people think it is when compared to mastery. If you look at most sims, most statistics, most warlock guides, they're going to put mastery above haste. Okay, if you look at single target sims, you look at single target guides, they're going to have haste marginally better than mastery, to the point where it's probably just worth it to just stack mastery. Well, I'm here to tell you why haste is probably much better than mastery in a lot of cases, okay? In a lot of cases with single target especially, okay? So the power of haste comes from one thing: soul shard generation, okay? That's where haste is very, very strong. How do you get soul shards? You get them from your agony ticks. The more your agony ticks, with a little bit of RNG involved, the more soul shards you generate. So haste will increase the rate at which your agonies tick. Okay, so in fights where you're going to have maximal agony uptime and where you want to use unstable afflictions as much as possible, you're going to get the most benefit, right? So one fight that comes to mind in particular where I believe haste to be much stronger than mastery would be Talic, right? Specifically the elevator phase, and no sim will capture this. Why? Because during the elevator phase, you have an invulnerable target, which you must keep an agony on for soul shard generation, and then adds that don't live that long, which you must maximize your unstable afflictions on these adds, right? And you want to generate as much unstable afflictions as possible because that is going to give you your most value, right? So there's literally no sim right now where you can design to really mimic this situation. You'd have to design a sim in which there's one invulnerable target and one short-living ad that spawns every now and then. Very hard to do, right? If you just did a two-target sim and those ads lived forever and took full damage, you would see mastery doing relatively well, right? Because then you keep maximal dots on one target, maximal dots on the other. However, that's not how Talic plays out, right? So in that elevator phase, for example, you're going to have an agony on Talic the entire time, and you're going to have an agony on the ad as it spawns. This is going to generate you a lot of soul shards. So then you want to put your dots on the ad, and you want to get as many unstable afflictions as possible on that ad, because that's literally going to be your only source of damage. The more soul shards you generate, the more unstable afflictions you get, and the more damage you will have during that ad phase. Okay, so in that particular instance, and you're going to see haste pull very far ahead, especially in the elevator phase with the ads on Talic. Another area where haste can do really well is unloading unstable afflictions after your burst is done window with a potion up, right? So basically the way this works is if you go through your regular opener, you stack unstable afflictions, let's say you get 4, you use your dark lair, and then you're now going into your normal opener priority. Well, during this time, if you use your potion, you're still going to have potion uptime, right? So while your potion is up, your goal should be to get as many unstable afflictions as possible, because it's your #1 damage dealer, and while the potion's up, it does even more damage, right? So haste is going to pull far ahead of mastery during this time as well, right? So you burst, assuming this is single target, right? And then after your window, after you use dark lair and you're going into your normal priority, let's say you have now 2 to 3 shards generated at this time, which is much more than mastery can do, right? That's when you want to keep unloading unstable afflictions, right? While you still have your potion up. It's very hard to capture that situation as well in a sim, okay? Because I'm not sure if sims actually account for lust windows like that you'll have in those special boss situations. So here's another area where haste can pull far ahead, is if you get a lot of unstable afflictions and use that right after your dark lair while potion is up. Good luck finding a sim for that. It's going to be difficult, right? So that's also another area. Another possible area too is for huge death bolts, right? So if you can generate enough unstable afflictions where you can also generate bigger death bolts, right? So So you can use that with like a DSM window or something like that. If you're in a fight where there's 3 DSMs and 2 dark layers, well, maybe your second DSM you can actually go a little bit crazy on the unstable afflictions because you're going to have so many soul shards, right? An example of that would be on Vectis, for example. You're going to have an add up and the boss up, so your soul shard generation is going to be pretty good. And let's say after the intermission, you want to use DSM, and then you can possibly unload some unstable afflictions during that time and then get a nice little death bolt in there. Whereas with mastery, you might only have 1, 2 unstable afflictions during that time. Another area in which haste is very strong is if you have racking brilliance. So what racking brilliance does is it's an Azurite power. First of all, it's very powerful, and it basically reads as follows. For every other soul shard your agony generates, you also increase your intellect by 314 for 6 seconds. This is extremely strong when you stack haste, right? So the more soul shards you generate, the more procs of racking brilliance you will get. Okay, this is huge, right? So if you're doing a haste build, you also want to try to get racking brilliance, and this is what I do. Okay, this is very strong. So in fights where you're going to have maximal agony uptime, you're going to do really well with this trait as well. It's huge. Now, fights where mastery is definitely much better, I would say, would be fights where you're going to use absolute corruption, such as with Mithrax and possibly Gahun if you go absolute corruption. So for Mithrax and Gahun, during those add phases, if you have absolute corruption, you actually want to cast your corruptions first, right? Because they're going to last forever. Then your agonies. And then if you have time, your haunt and unstable affliction on all those targets. If you have maximal haste during this time, you will likely be overcapped on soul shards before you start casting unstable afflictions. This is inefficient damage, right? So haste becomes very, very difficult to optimize your damage in situations such as these, right? Because you're going to want to have all your dots on the targets. You're going to be casting agony second, which is not optimal, right, for soul shard generation. And then you want to be never overcapped on your soul shards while you're casting unstable affliction. You want to get unstable affliction on all the necessary targets. It's much easier and stronger to just go mastery for those fights. So what I do for this tier is I will gem all my gear and try to maximize haste. I do believe haste is very, very, very strong in Uldir. And when I get to the last couple bosses, right, and I'll also have 2 racking brilliance traits, right, or at least 1. When I get to the last 2 bosses, Mithrax and Gahun, I'm gonna gem everything mastery and try to maximize my mastery. That is a little bit min-maxy, but you know, just to maximize my damage right there. Now, a lot of you are not gonna want to regem, you know, every week. Like, that's really annoying and probably not fun, right? So my point here is, if you were to go haste over mastery and your gear happens to just specialize haste, your re-origination array is increasing your haste, don't worry. That's still really, really strong, and in many situations it's better than mastery. So if you want to stack haste, go for it. Just realize where your haste is going to really pull ahead of mastery, and how you can utilize your rotations differently to really maximize your damage when you're going haste. Understand how haste works in comparison to mastery and where that extra damage is coming from. Remember, soul shard regeneration and maximal agony uptime and maximum amount of unstable afflictions. One more reason why haste can be so strong, so powerful, that I forgot to mention that is very important, is it makes better utilization out of your lust windows. Okay, so if you know how lust works, it will increase your haste by 30% for 40 seconds, right? So basically, since it's not a fixed increase, it's based off a percentage. So the more haste you have, the more haste you're going to gain from your lust. All right, The other two moves, the other move that you have that will do this is Dark Soul Misery. It increases your haste by 30%. And if you're a troll, you'll also have Berserking, which will increase your haste by 15%. All of these moves become more effective the more haste that you have, right? So just to give an example, if you're coming into a fight with 1,000 haste and you use Lust, you'll gain 30% of that, which would be equal to 300 haste. Now, if you stack haste and you come into a fight with 2,000 haste and you use Lust, you now gain 600 haste, and essentially your Lust window becomes twice as effective. It doubles in power. You gain double the amount of haste that you would have, right? Which, when you combine your Lust with Dark Soul Misery, with Berserking, and possibly even like Quick Navigation and other haste enchants and haste items, you can do some pretty absurd things in your haste, in your Lust windows, right? The best example I have to really showcase this is this parse from this guy here on Mythic Talak. This guy got the #1 non-padded parse on Mythic Talak as Affliction. So if we were to look at his parse here, as you can see in his Lust window, he peaks at about 90,000 damage, which is just insane. If we go to look at his build, he's coming in with 2,000 haste and 1,300 mastery. So he's clearly stacking haste. In fact, you can see here, he's gemmed everything into haste, and he even is using Quick Navigation, which is the haste enchant, not the mastery one, right? And then if we zoom in on just his Lust window and look at his cast, so he uses his second pot, and as he's going into his second Dark Glare, he gets 5 Unstable Afflictions. All looks good. You'll see not only less than 15 seconds later, he's able to use 5 more Unstable Afflictions. All the while, this is while his Battle Potion of Intellect is still active, which is absurd, right? Because he's generating so many soul shards from how fast his agony is ticking during this time. So, you know, he does his opener during the Lust window with 5 Unstable Afflictions, and, you know, about 12 seconds later, he gets 5 more, which is ridiculous. If you remember, Unstable Affliction is going to be your #1 damage dealer in any fight, and to get 10 of them off, 5 of them being extended during this time, all the while with a Battle Potion of Intellect active is really good. It's very strong. So as you can see, you can do some pretty nutty things when you have a lot of haste like this. Alright guys, hope that helps, and yeah, see you later. Feel free to leave me a comment and subscribe. See ya.